Hello, my dear students. Let me welcome you to this video module wherein I am going to give you an introduction to data sufficiency. So let's straight away get started. Let me ask you a question. What is the value of X? Can you answer this question now? No, right? But you can make out that there is an unknown X here. That X, the unknown, it has got some values, and I am asking you what is the value of X, which means there is a value that is there in my mind. I have represented the same using X, okay, using a variable, an unknown X, and now I am asking you what is the value of X. So that's the question here. What is that value that is there in my mind, right? So you cannot answer this question right now. All right. So for answering this question, you need some extra information. The data that is provided to you as part of the question, it is not sufficient enough to answer the question. For answering this question, you need some extra information. All right. So that extra information I will be providing to you in the form of two statements. Let's consider the first statement here. That extra information I'm telling you, it is x square, it is equal to 25. So with x square is equal to 25, tell me what is the value of x. Is it possible for you to identify the value of x? I will say no, it's not possible because x square is equal to 25. It gives me the input that x, it could be plus 5 or it could be minus 5, right? So just by this first statement which reads x square is equal to 25, x could be plus 5 or x could be minus 5, I cannot tell you the value of x. I cannot help you to know what is that unique value of x that is there in my mind. It could be plus 5 or it could be minus 5. All right. So I will say that statement 1 alone, when you take, again, it is not sufficient enough to answer the question. All right. Now, what I'm going to do here is, I'm now asking you to consider statement 1, whatever the findings that you have made from statement 1, just forget it. Okay. Now let us consider statement 2 alone. That statement 2, it is x greater than 0. Okay, I want you to process the statement 2 alone. X greater than 0 means what? If I'm considering that this is a number line, okay, 0 is located here. X greater than 0 means I am referring to all positive numbers. But what is the value of x? When I'm processing statement 2 alone, it can be referring to any positive value of x, right? So I will say statement 2 alone, if you take, again, that is not sufficient for you to answer the question. So the situation here is that there is some data which is there as part of the question. That data is not sufficient enough to answer the question. I gave you the first statement which reads x square is equal to 25. Statement 1 alone is not sufficient enough to answer the question. Then you considered statement 2 alone that says x greater than 0. Statement 2 alone is not sufficient enough to answer the question, right? Now, what you're going to do is you are going to combine the statement 1 and statement 2 together. So when I consider statement 1, I get x, it could be plus 5, or I get x, it could be minus 5. So statement 1 alone, these are the possibilities. Statement 2 alone, when I consider x is greater than 0. But when I combine statement 1 and statement 2 together, I am getting a unique value associated with x, and that is x, it is equal to plus 5, right? Which means I can answer this particular question when I combine statement 1 input and statement 2 input together. Okay, so now I will say that for answering this question, statement 1 alone is not sufficient, statement 2 alone is not sufficient, but combining the data which I get from statement 1 as well as statement 2, when I put them together, then I can answer the question. So I will say I can answer the question by combining the data from statement 1 as well as statement 2 together. So I will say statement 1 and statement 2 together required for answering this question. All right. So data sufficiency, it's all about checking how much extra input that you need for answering a question. That's all. So one main rule of thumb is that never combine the statement 1 and statement 2 together in the first phase itself. Okay, please remember, you have to combine that statement 1 data and statement 2 data when and only when you are sure that statement 1 alone is not sufficient. All right. And in the same way, statement 2 alone is not sufficient. Only at that stage, when you are sure that individual statements are not sufficient enough to answer the question, at that state only, you will combine statement 1 and statement 2 together. You should not combine the first and the second statement together in the first phase, in the upfront first phase itself. You should not do that. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Let us continue the journey. Let me ask you another question. Is x greater than 0? So some data is there as part of the question. There is an unknown x. My question is that x positive? That is my question. So what are the possible answers here? The possible answers are, it could be a yes or it could be a no, right? It's a yes or no type of question. The question is x greater than 0? The reply what I say, the answer what I give, it may be a yes or it may be a no. But at this time, you cannot say is x greater than 0 because data that is there as part of the question is not sufficient enough, right? So for answering the question, you need some extra input that is going to be given to you in the form of a statement. Let us consider the first statement. I'm telling you x cube is 105. Now let me tell you, dear students, when I say x cube is equal to 105, you should not waste your time finding out what is that value of x whose cube is 105. I know that if x cube it is positive, then automatically x it will also be positive. So statement 1 alone, when I process, I can say that statement 1 alone, it is sufficient enough to answer the question. Okay. So please be aware, as far as this particular question is concerned, statement 1 alone is sufficient enough to answer that yes, that x is greater than 0. 1 alone is sufficient, I will say. Now, let me consider statement 2 alone. We have to continue the journey. Okay, let us consider statement 2 alone. Statement 2 alone, when I consider, it says x cube is minus 205. Since x cube, it is negative, I know that x, it has to be negative. So when I process statement 2 alone, I know that statement 2 alone is sufficient enough to give me the answer no. If I'm asking you, is x greater than 0? X cube is minus 205. I can tell you that statement 2 alone gives you the answer no. Did you get me? And please be aware that no is an answer in data sufficiency. So statement 2 alone is sufficient enough to answer the question. Now, the rule of thumb, no is an answer in data sufficiency. All right. So for the previous question, what you saw here, It was, is x greater than 0? The first statement what I gave you was, look at the statement 1. What I gave you was x cube, it is equal to 105. The second statement x cube is equal to minus 205. So statement 1 alone, yes, it is sufficient. Okay, sufficient to answer the question. Statement 2 alone is also sufficient enough to answer the question. So for this particular question, I will say that either statement alone is sufficient. Okay, now you may have a doubt. Sir, in the first case, you are saying that yes, it is greater than 0. In the second case, you are saying that no, it is not greater than 0. It is negative. So there is a yes here and there is a no here. So is x really greater than 0? Because there is a yes and there is a no when I'm processing individual statements alone. So what is the final answer that you should say? That doubt might come. Let me tell you, the answer will be either statement alone is sufficient. Okay, don't consider that there is a yes with first statement, there is a no with the second statement, so there is a conflict like that. Please don't think, because you are not supposed to combine these inputs together, because either statement alone is sufficient enough to answer the question. That is sufficient, which means no need to combine statement 1 and statement 2 together, because you know the rule, it says you should combine statement 1 and statement 2 together only when you are sure that individual statements alone it's of no use. But as far as this question is concerned, when we considered, you know that individual statements alone, it is sufficient. So no need to combine 1 and 2 together, statement 1 and 2 together for answering this question. All right. So no is an answer in data sufficiency. Is there a conflict in the answers? Definitely there is no conflict in the answers, because individual statements alone are sufficient enough to answer the questions. All right. So with this note, the introductory part related to data sufficiency, it has reached a conclusion. One more point I would like to say, that is, there may be a situation in which there is a question that is asked, statement 1 given, statement 2 given. The situation will be like this. Statement 1 alone is not sufficient. Statement 2 alone is not sufficient. Combining statement 1 and statement 2 together, then also you are not in a position to answer the question. All right. Which means I will say that in that case, data is insufficient. Okay, like that I will say. So that is the ultimate scenario that can happen. Individual statements alone not giving you a result. Combining the inputs from statement 1 and statement 2 together, that is also not giving you a result. Then you will say that data, it is insufficient. So let's solve a few questions, okay, that I shall share with you. The point is, analyze the options carefully and then select that appropriate option that is relevant for that question, and that is going to be your final answer. All right. So it's very important that you have to analyze the options very much carefully before you are attempting questions based on data sufficiency. With this video module, it comes to a conclusion. Let's solve a few more questions. Take care.